storm raged with a ferocity that seemed almost supernatural, as if the heavens themselves were determined to swallow the ship whole. Waves crashed against the ship with relentless force, each one more powerful than the last, threatening to tear the vessel apart. 5 sailors fought for their lives, their faces etched with determination and fear as they battled the elements. The Sea Fury, their vessel, groaned under the relentless assault, its timbers creaking and cracking as it struggled to stay afloat. Rain lashed down in sheets, blinding and cold, turning the deck into a treacherous, slippery battlefield. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terror on their faces with each blinding flash, casting eerie shadows that danced across the deck. Sailor 1, as Captain William. Hold fast, men, Captain William roared, his voice barely audible above the tempest, his words a desperate plea for survival. But his words were lost to the wind, swallowed by the howling gale and the deafening roar of the sea. Another monstrous wave slammed into the ship, tossing it like a toy in a child's bath, sending men and equipment flying. The sickening crunch of splintering wood echoed the sailors' dread. They were going down, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The sailors, battered and bruised, clung to debris, tossed about in the churning sea like ragdolls in a washing machine. Salt water stung their eyes, the taste of fear filling their mouths as they struggled to keep their heads above water. Each man fought the waves with every ounce of strength they had left, praying for a miracle, for some sign of hope in the darkness. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the storm subsided, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The sea, moments ago a raging beast, lay calm and still, as if exhausted by its own fury. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light on the water and revealing a sight both beautiful and terrifying. An island, shrouded in mist, emerged from the ocean depths like a phantom. It was their only hope, a beacon of salvation in the vast, unforgiving sea. The sailors, their bodies aching and their spirits nearly broken, fixed their eyes on the island, knowing that reaching it was their only chance of survival. With renewed determination, they began to paddle towards the distant shore, each stroke bringing them closer to the unknown fate that awaited them on the mysterious island. Exhausted, the sailors dragged themselves onto the beach. They collapsed on the sand, gasping for air, their bodies trembling with fatigue. They were alive for now. The island, though forbidding, offered sanctuary. Sailor 3, as John. Land. John, the first mate, gasped, his voice hoarse. He coughed, spitting out seawater. Relief washed over them, momentarily eclipsing the fear of the unknown. They were alive. They had survived the wrath of the sea. Captain William, his weathered face etched with exhaustion, surveyed their surroundings. The island was a tapestry of dense jungle and jagged cliffs, shrouded in an eerie silence. It was both beautiful and unsettling, a paradise with an undercurrent of menace. Sailor 1, as Captain William. We need to find shelter, gather supplies. We'll tend to the injured, then figure a way out of here. His words, though laced with uncertainty, instilled a flicker of hope in his men. The island was alive. Strange sounds filled the air. Whispers seemed to emanate from the dense foliage. The sailors, their initial relief fading, felt a growing sense of unease. Sailor 5, as Thomas. Did you hear that? Thomas, the youngest of the crew, whispered, his eyes wide with fear. He pointed a trembling finger towards the jungle's edge, but there was nothing there, or so they thought. Julien, a brooding man with haunted eyes, felt a chill crawl down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Something lurked in the shadows, its presence unseen but palpable. Sailor 4, as Mark. It's just the wind, lad. Mark, his voice gruff but laced with a tremor, reassured him. He too felt the island's strange energy, but he kept his fears to himself, not wanting to alarm the others. Section 4. The Gaze from the Shadows. Encounters with the Unknown. Days turned into nights, and the once vibrant island now seemed to be cloaked in an eerie silence. The sailors, who had initially been hopeful of a quick rescue, found themselves grappling with the harsh reality of their situation. The sailors established a makeshift camp, their days spent foraging for food and sending distress signals. They built rudimentary shelters from the island's resources, hoping to find solace in their temporary homes. Each day, they would gather around the fire, sharing stories of their past adventures, trying to keep their spirits high. But the island held its secrets close. It was as if the very land they stood on was alive, whispering ancient tales of those who had come before them and never left. The dense foliage and the towering trees seemed to hide more than just the island's natural beauty. and the creatures that inhabited it were starting to reveal themselves. At first, it was subtle. A rustle in the bushes, an unfamiliar call echoing through the night. The sailors tried to rationalize these occurrences, attributing them to the island's wildlife. It began with fleeting glimpses, shadows darting between the trees, too quick to be identified. The sailors would catch sight of something out of the corner of their eyes, only for it to vanish when they turned to look. Shadows moving just beyond their vision. The feeling of being watched became a constant companion, an unsettling presence that gnawed at their nerves. The once comforting darkness of the jungle now seemed to be filled with unseen eyes. Pairs of eyes, glowing in the dark, watching them from the jungle's edge. These eyes were unlike any animal they had ever encountered. Their glow almost hypnotic, drawing the sailors' gaze despite their fear. The sailors dismissed it as their imaginations, fueled by fear and exhaustion. But Julien knew better. He had always been more attuned to the supernatural, sensing things that others could not. He felt a deep, primal fear that told him these were no ordinary creatures. One evening, while collecting firewood, Julien felt a cold breath on his neck. The air around him seemed to drop in temperature, and a shiver ran down his spine. He knew he was not alone. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. The forest seemed to close in on him, the trees casting long, menacing shadows. His breath came in short, panicked gasps as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Standing before him was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was as if the island's darkest secrets had taken physical form, manifesting in this terrifying being. It was humanoid in form, but its skin was covered in scales, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The creature's gaze seemed to pierce through Julien, seeing into the very depths of his soul. Its claws, sharp as razors, glinted in the fading light. Each movement it made was deliberate, almost predatory, as if it was sizing Julien up. Julien stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, as the creature let out a low growl, a sound that seemed to vibrate in his very bones. The growl was not just a warning, it was a promise of the danger that lay ahead. Julien knew that this encounter was only the beginning, and the true horrors of the island were yet to be unveiled. Section 5. Julien's Descent, the Mind Unraveling. The encounter with the creature pushed Julien to the edge. He became withdrawn, his sleep plagued by nightmares. His shipmates, concerned by his deteriorating mental state, tried to reason with him, but Julien was lost in a world of his own. He saw the creatures everywhere, lurking in the shadows, whispering his name, their eyes burning into his soul. He scratched symbols into the sand, desperate wards against the unseen forces that tormented him. His reality was crumbling. Julien, as narrator, "They're everywhere," he would mutter, his voice a low, frantic whisper. "They're watching us, they're waiting for the right moment." His words, though nonsensical, sent chills down the spines of his companions. Julien's descent into madness was a terrifying spectacle. He became a prisoner of his own mind, haunted by the creatures that only he could see. The island, once their sanctuary, had become his personal hell. Section 6. Shadows Dance, the Night of Terror. The storm hit on the 7th night, a night that would be etched into their memories forever. It was a tempest even more ferocious than the one that had brought them to the island, a relentless force of nature that seemed almost sentient in its fury. The wind howled, a symphony of chaos, and the waves crashed against the shore with a vengeance, as if the sea itself was trying to reclaim the land. But this was no ordinary storm. It was as if the very elements were conspiring against them, a prelude to the horrors that were about to unfold. This was the night the creatures came for them, emerging from the shadows like phantoms of the deep. Julien, as narrator, "They're here!" he shrieked, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. "They've come for us!" His words, fueled by madness and desperation, were a chilling prophecy that sent shivers down the spines of his fellow sailors. The other sailors, huddled in their makeshift shelter, felt a primal fear grip their hearts, a fear that transcended the rationale and tapped into something ancient and instinctual. The creatures, no longer content with lurking in the shadows, were upon them, their forms barely visible in the flickering light of the storm. Their eyes, glowing with malevolent intent, pierced the darkness as they surrounded the sailors' camp, a ring of terror that tightened with each passing moment. The night erupted in chaos, a cacophony of screams, growls, and the relentless pounding of the storm. Sailor 1, as narrator. The sailors, armed with whatever they could find, fought back against the creatures, their fear giving way to a desperate resolve. The air filled with the sounds of battle, the clang of metal against claw, the screams of both men and monsters, a symphony of survival and despair. It was a fight for their very survival, a struggle that would test their courage, their strength, and their very will to live. The sailors used makeshift weapons, anything they could get their hands on, to fend off the relentless onslaught of the creatures. Determination etched on their faces. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that failure meant certain death. As the night wore on, the creatures began to retreat, melting back into the shadows from whence they came. But the sailors knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Exhausted and battered, the sailors caught their breath, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the creatures' return. As dawn broke over the stormy sea, the first light of day brought a fragile sense of hope, but the memory of the night lingered, a haunting reminder of the terror they had faced. They regrouped, tending to their wounds and fortifying their camp, knowing that the creatures could return at any moment. With a sense of foreboding, they looked out to sea, the horizon a stark reminder of the unknown dangers that still lurked in the depths. As the day wore on, they prepared for another night of terror, their resolve steeled by the knowledge that they had survived, but the fear of what lay ahead still gnawed at their hearts. The sun set over the stormy sea, casting long shadows over the island, and the sailors braced themselves for whatever horrors the night might bring. United in their struggle, they stood together, ready to face the night and whatever terrors it might hold, their spirits unbroken despite the odds.